Welcome back, everybody, to the ConExpo ConEgg podcast. I'm your host, as always, Taylor White. With me here today, I have an awesome guest. His story pretty much sums up everything that this podcast is about, proving that the trades aren't a fallback, that they are a calling. Geoff Dodge grew up around racing. He got his name from a driver that his dad's watching at the hospital the day he was born, grew up watching his old man win on Pikes Peak and in sprint cars. And by the time he was a kid, there was never really a question about what he wanted to do. He won Rookie of the Year and a scholarship at the 2005 Knoxville Nationals, which moved him to the Indianapolis to race the Indy Lights Series. He got to live out a childhood racing dream at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But here's where it all gets interesting today. Geoff is a racer who became an excavator, who became a racer again. He's co-owner of Lamb Excavating in Indianapolis, a company that has built his name doing the dirty, complicated work most flippers run away from: sewer replacement, basement waterproofing, foundations, drainage, septic. And now he's closing the skilled trade gap by showing kids the opportunity. It's sitting right here in the trades. He works with SkillsUSA. He's tied into the National Equipment League. And he's basically using a sprint car as a billboard for the next generation of operators and diesel techs. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm a little bit humbled that you pretty much have my story already. So I don't know. Are we done?
No, I try to do my best to explain to people this is who we got here today. But, how did a kid from Colorado Springs kind of end up running dirt in Indy?
That's a good question. So as a kid, I was really only into two things, man. It was race cars and heavy equipment. And my mom was a school teacher. My dad is a finance wealth management guy, so we don't have any background in this industry. But I was the kid that when they would come and do work on our street, was out there the whole time. Pretty soon that became my mom driving around and sitting at construction sites while I watched. If I could sad puppy dog well enough that one of the guys working on site would let me take a ride in a backhoe or sit in an excavator or something while they were loading a truck, like that was greatest day ever. So I kind of like what you say when you say, our industry is a calling. I would say I had that calling. And at 5 years old, I told my mom I was going to be a backhoe operator or a race car driver. And she said those were both terrible choices. So basically that's what I've spent my whole life doing, and feel like life is the better for it. Story of how I got to Indianapolis is kind of unusual. You did mention my dad was a racer, so that was the kind of connection to racing was family. That was number one, for sure. And not that the being in the dirt business was a fallback, but I was going to race as long as I could first. I did get lucky and win a scholarship at the Knoxville Nationals, which is kind of the Indy 500 of sprint car racing in Knoxville, Iowa, and got a chance to come to Indy. I had grown up. It was 1988. I watched Rick Mears win the 500, and it was like, that's what I want to do. My dad told me when we started racing karts, he was like, yeah, you're never going to race at Indianapolis. I can't get you there. And it just worked out that we got a chance to come here and take a shot at it. Learned my first lesson of big time auto racing partway in, which was one of the backers of my scholarship pulled out, and they said, hey, that's the end of the road unless you can come up with another $100,000. And it was like, well, I guess it's back to the dirt tracks I go. And I think I want to stay in Indiana because Colorado's an awesome place to be. The mountains are wonderful. I miss them every day, but it's a terrible place to be if you want to drive race cars compared to here in the Circle City.
It's interesting how you kind of took that pivot. What essentially called you back to earth moving? And then I want to get into more about, some of the trade gap stuff that you're solving right now. But what was the big driving factor to go back into the trade?
How did we end up in construction? So that's a good question. My grandfather had horses, so if you've been around horses, there's usually like a skid steer or something around. And at about 7, my grandfather and my dad were having an argument and had a skid steer hung up on the side of a barn. And I kind of was like, I'll do it. And so I became the family equipment operator starting at about 7. Now, we weren't doing anything crazy, but that was an outlet for that interest, and it kind of allowed me to learn to run a machine. I did some more of that stuff for some other people that boarded horses kind of through high school, just cleaning stuff up, loading stuff out, nothing major, but was competent on a skiddy. So I ended up here in Indianapolis. I was working a dead-end sales job to pay the rent and racing. And I had a buddy that was flipping houses. And so I went over to go check out what he was doing. And the backyard was a mess. And I said, hey, what are you going to do back here? And he said, well, I've got a guy who's going to come clear it all out and tear out this old garage foundation and put in some gravel parking. And it was like, well, what are they going to charge you to do that? And he told me a number. And I said, well, if I could save you $500, would you let me do it? And he was like, yeah, I don't care. That sounds good. And so I rented a skid steer and hired some triaxles and did the project. And at the end of it, it came out pretty nice. And he came to me and said, man, like, what'd you make in the last day and a half? Not that I need to knuckle you on what you made. I'm just curious. And I told him, hey, I made $1,000.
Yeah. So my partner was like, man, we need to do this every day. And I said, if we can find the work, I'd love to. So that was kind of the beginning of leaving my dead-end sales job. And we did flip houses and do kitchens and bathrooms and stuff for about a year. And then funny how oftentimes what seems like a terrible thing turns into the greatest opportunity to come along that you could. The house that I did the backyard on, he was the real estate agent on it as well, and kind of made an honest error in disclosure. And we got notice that we were being sued because the basement was wet. And it was kind of like, certainly they can't enforce judgment if we offer to come fix it. And so I started doing a bunch of research on how to best fix the problem, and figured, hey, we could go rent equipment if we can find a month worth of work, and probably go fix that problem in the 4th week of the rental. That led to what we call the month of excavating. And that was it, man. Like, we never looked back.
That is quite the story. Yeah, normally you don't hear people kind of go from race car driver to something else to construction. And do you feel like now that you're in it, it's like, why the need, I guess, to try and solve this skills gap, right? Like, let's touch on that. I mean, a huge part of our conversation, and before this one even kind of came on, we were talking about, Mike Rowe and that podcast as well too. And we kind of touched on it there as well. It'd just be interesting to know, what are we missing here?
As Lamb Excavating kind of started to be a thing and grew, and we went from building paver patios and fixing the odd sewer line to doing work for large builders and contractors and trying to grow our business, felt like we were struggling to find good people. And we were definitely struggling to find young people that had potential to solve difficult problems. I mean, before I started doing the work, I guess I didn't realize just how technical it is and what sort of creative problem solver you need to get through what even is a fairly simple project. And I felt like I hate to say it this way, but we were forced as a newer company that was trying to find its feet, that we were using everybody else's recycled garbage and having pretty recycled garbage results. So I looked back at my own story, and you see the way that we've done it for the last, 40 years maybe, that if you struggle in a traditional academic environment, maybe you ought to go to trade school. And, if you're going to have a successful career, you got to go to college. And I thought, what would it take to find a younger version of me to say, wait, I'm going to choose this industry. I'm not going to fall into this industry. I'm going to choose it, and I'm going to be proactive about it because I have an interest. I've always had an interest in it. And the only thing I could think that kept me from choosing it from day one was the fact that I didn't realize there was as much opportunity here as there was. And I wanted to stay in Indiana because I wanted to find a way to keep racing, wanted to own my own program so that I wasn't beholden to a car owner who has 10 people calling him every week trying to steal your seat. And so we built the business with the goal of being able to put my own stuff together to race. And it took 6 years and we got there. And so I kind of just stood back and looked and was like, man, I have a platform. I have my own success story. And if somebody had walked into my middle school or high school and said, this was my dream and this is what I was able to build in construction, I'd have been all in.
Okay, you might realize that Geoff looks a little bit different, and so do I if you're watching this on video right now. That is because the first little bit of the podcast, we had some technical difficulties, and now the second part of the podcast, we are back again. So, Geoff, welcome back once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm sorry that my internet hamster got tired and wasn't turning the wheel fast enough, but glad we get another shot at this.
Yeah, no, that's all good. We were leaving off, realizing you and your partner realizing, okay, like, there's possibly something here with the business. And I kind of would like to know more about and getting into like, what's your day to day, and for a little bit of background, right when we got on this thing, you were already on a call. We were like, I'll go out there, I'll unlock the gate, I'll do this. I got a sock kit in my truck. So you seem like you're pretty involved with the day to day.
Yeah, we're a small company. We employ between 6 and 10 people, depending kind of where you catch us. I am the lead estimator, so most of the work we do runs across my desk, but I still go out and do work also. So the particular site that we were on the phone about, we're putting a new septic system in for a park expansion here in Indianapolis. It's our first experience working on a union site. So that's one that I kind of felt like I needed to be involved and make sure that we didn't step on any landmines, so to speak. I still run quite a few jobs. Still going to the field is my favorite part. I haven't built with my partner. We haven't built this massive enterprise that's afforded us these cool opportunities. It's something that in my mind is fairly accessible for some of the young people that we come across to think that they can achieve.
I think that's really important what you said there at the end, because a lot of people that aren't listening maybe don't know, or they do know, but your big mission, your big thing that you also focus on is closing this skills gap that we have. And I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about racing to build brighter futures and kind of where did that come from?
Yeah, so we'll take a couple steps backwards and build back up to it. Ultimately, I stayed in Indiana because this is the epicenter for a race car driver. So if I was to go home and go to work with my dad into the quote unquote family business, which is finance, there would be no point in continuing racing. And I wanted to continue racing. So I had to find something I could do in central Indiana that would hopefully get me to a place that I could build my own race team. I had kind of gotten to the end of my appetite to work for other people on the racing side of things. Was tired of building up operations only to get handed 2 9/16 wrenches to take my seat out before it really got good. The reality is, in the racing world, like there's way more talented individuals with helmet bags than there are good opportunities. So I wanted to build my own opportunity, something that I had control over and could build on. So 6 years into the construction business, I got to the place where it was like, okay, cool. I think I can start building my own race team here. So we put a race car together, and in trying to raise additional support for our racing efforts, somebody very wise told me that the key to raising motorsports sponsorships or whatever is you've got to find the story that you're most qualified to tell, that the world needs to hear, that you use racing as a platform to transmit that story. And so it was kind of profound. It took a little bit of time to just kind of simmer, but ultimately I settled that, hey, I've built this small construction company that's gotten me to this place. And I looked at the rest of my life, things that I never really cared about when I was in my early 20s. And that had all transformed for the positive as well. And I thought, my biggest challenge, and I think probably our biggest threat as an excavating business, is where is the next generation of young talent that's going to come into our industry? we're on the utility side of things, and we often have to come up with creative and innovative solutions for our customers' problems that are both constructible, fit within budget, and solve the problem. And I was feeling a little bit like we didn't have maybe the sharpest end of young talent choosing our industry. And so I looked at my own history and thought, if somebody would have come along and showed me what was possible in construction when I was 16, 17, 18, I might have gone with this as plan A, not plan B. And so that was kind of the aha moment, was that race car was a shiny object that we could take out. And ultimately, we think some of our most important work is with middle school age kids, because they're getting ready to make career path elections when they get to high school. Here is something that I can come, and whether they have any interest in motorsports or not doesn't matter. If some young person looks and goes, well, gee whiz, if he can go racing and build that race car on the back of what he's done in construction, if I want to have the coolest boat at the lake, or a single income household, or horse property, whatever it is in the back of their mind, that's kind of their life dream that they're not really sure that they can achieve, the goal is to show them that our industry is a place that you can do that. So if you have an interest in working with your hands, if you have an interest in building things, if you have an interest in solving problems, that you should choose our industry. You should keep it kind of toward the top of your plans, as opposed to, the fallback. We want to kind of bust the mold of, oh, you struggle in a traditional academic environment, maybe you should choose the trades. We'd like to find some of those kids that excel in a traditional academic environment and say, hey, why don't you come to our industry and become ultimately industry leaders that can help serve your community and solve problems.
I really like that. One thing that you said that I would love to know your answer on, is you said we wanted to show these young people, what is possible in the industry. So I'm going to ask you, what is possible?
I think a better question would be, what's impossible? And I don't have an answer for that, Taylor. I think really at this point in time in our industry, the only thing that you're limited by is your own capacity to build a team, solve problems. I started this journey with less than $1,000 to my name. I was renting a room in somebody's house for $300 a month. And we did that first job. I rented the equipment to do it. I hired the trucking, and I made a little bit of money. And it just sort of was grown organically from there. And it only took 6 years to get to the place where I was building a race car. Like, that was probably as much time as it would take some people to get through college. So I don't know that there's anything that's off the table in our industry. I'm not a business savant. I'm not really good at delegating and building a system and turning it over to somebody else. I'm pretty good at being able to go out and price a job and then go build it. I think that there's plenty of people who probably are capable of much, much more than I've done in this industry. And my hope is that we'll bring some of them in, because we've been doing this now for about 10 years, 11 years, I think is this year, I think is our 11th year. And within central Indiana, so call it Marion County, which is where Indianapolis is, and the donut counties that surround Marion County, I can't drive 5 minutes in any direction in any of those counties and not come across something that our little company has either built, fixed, or worked on. And we're not a huge company. So our goal is to try and bring in the next generation of talent for our industry. And if we can raise up some more of them, I think about the amount of stuff that they'll touch through their careers and what that will mean for our community and their communities.
The SkillsUSA work, what are you doing with the students there?
Again, kind of to give the picture of how we got there, as this idea that, hey, we're going to use my race program as an opportunity to show these kids what's possible. And I'm out talking to some people that I know, and everybody's saying, Geoff, it sounds like you're doing nonprofit work. You need to start a nonprofit. And so I did a little bit of research, and it was like, oh man, by time we get a nonprofit stood up, I'll be out of money and out of time, and we won't have done anything. So I thought there's got to be a nonprofit that's already working on this. Found SkillsUSA. They had heavy equipment and civil construction as a career pathway, at least at the national level. So I got in touch with our state director and said, what do we have to do to get involved with these kids? And she said, well, we don't have heavy equipment or civil construction here in Indiana. And it was like, okay, so what do we got to do to start it? So a couple of our partners, at the time we had Diamond Equipment, which is a Case Hyundai Tech UG dealer with 5 locations, headquartered in Evansville, Indiana. They Terre Haute, Mount Vernon, Illinois, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee. And then a guy that I had been watching on YouTube trying to figure out how to do stuff, Mike Simon, who the public would know as Dirt Perfect.
Great guy.
Super great guy. And so I called Mike and I called Bob Brucken from Diamond Equipment and said, hey, we need to start a heavy equipment career pathway within the SkillsUSA Indiana space. And so Bob provided the equipment and Mike provided some moral support and some ideas. And I wrote the curriculum based around what we would hope that a young employee might be capable of. And we've grown it now for, I think, 4 years now here in Indiana. And we've really tried to model what they do nationally. SkillsUSA is an awesome organization. They offer leadership training, opportunity to kind of compete and kind of showcase what all the different trade schools are turning out in a single place at regional, state, and a national level. And at the national level, for heavy equipment, it's really, really neat what they do. And it's cool to see what the industry does. I think you got to give Amy Kraus and Volvo a lot of credit for what they've built. And kind of the whole MO is that the industry comes together and works together for the betterment of tomorrow. And so it's neat to see the major OEMs all sitting at the same lunch table, literally and figuratively, and putting this opportunity on for the nation's best students.
You mentioned that maybe you have any some new partnerships or something along those lines.
Lamb Excavating was what kind of provided the startup point for this. But we would not have been able to make it as far as we have if it wasn't for industry partnerships and people that have believed in what we're trying to do. So I mentioned kind of our core startup group of partners. We've got a few others that have come along the way. Drainage Solutions, pipe supplier here, kind of in the Midwest. We obviously work to support SkillsUSA. RBC Wealth Management has helped us, but there's one that we're really, really excited about that's just come on board. One of the places that we saw the young people were sort of struggling was in the area of underground utility safety. So that's understanding the 811 process, knowing what those marks mean, what the obligations were as an excavator under the dig law. And so at SkillsUSA Nationals, we made acquaintance with the folks at Ohio 811. They were standing up the underground utility safety portion of SkillsUSA's National Heavy Equipment curriculum. And I heard about what they were doing in Ohio and was like, man, can you guys try to get us plugged in with your counterparts here in Indiana? Because I'd love to get some of that happening here. 2.5-year journey that ultimately had me and the program standing in front of the Indiana Underground Regulatory Commission board. Funny story, when you get off the elevator and you think you're going to Indiana 811 and realize you're walking into the IURC and you're thinking to yourself like, this is where no contractor ever goes by choice. But they've been awesome. And so we're able to announce today that there is a conglomeration of the Indiana Underground Regulatory Commission, Indiana 811, and Ohio 811. And we are going to be bringing trainers to all of these trade programs. So at SkillsUSA, we see kind of the top in our state, the top students in our state. We take 10. So there's a lot of students that don't ever see us at state. And so we're going to be sending these trainers out to their programs to teach class for the day. We've also got some outreach that we're going to be doing at the races to reach DIY homeowners, because that's another kind of hard hard group for the 811 message to land with, but they're very much considered excavators under the Indiana dig law and Ohio dig law. And so it's an exciting partnership for us. One, because I know that it can do a lot of good. We've already sort of quantified the results of what you can do with a little bit of training through our SkillsUSA kids. And two, it's something that everybody in our industry has to deal with. And so I think it gives our effort a little bit more credibility to just have a recognizable name involved. And I think within our industry space, everybody knows 811.
Yeah. What are you most excited for about something like this? I mean, that's a big move, right? You have all, 3 different things kind of coming together here to make this. Like, what are you most excited for this? And what do you think that the best value is going to come out of this?
I think I'm most excited to see. So I mentioned we have kind of a test. The Ohio 811 people were very gracious and came to Indiana on their own dime for our state competition this year. We've been running the SkillsUSA National Standard exercise for a couple years, which is what they developed. And I was seeing students where our high score was like a 35% and our median score was like a 25%. So this year we conducted a 30-minute training the day before the event, and we saw our high score jump to an 85%, and the median score moved about 10%. So our median score was a 35%. So to see that big of a jump in 30 minutes, I'm really excited to see what 3 hours of training does for these young people. I think there's no reason that we shouldn't see all passing scores. And with the state of the industry and sort of the aged population of tradespeople moving out, and frankly, not enough of them coming in, if we can reach a lot of these young people coming in, I think we have an opportunity to kind of change the culture of the industry as it pertains to underground safety. And I've said for a long time, like, you give me someone that understands how not to damage infrastructure, and I can give that person a lot of reps to get good at the rest of the job. You give me somebody who's a really awesome operator and can do all the stuff great, but if they can't keep themselves out of trouble, I can't give them the seat time they need to reach their potential. So I think I'm most excited just to see how far we can move the needle as far as what kind of the culture of our industry is. I'm very, very excited that ultimately the state, the government in this case, saw us as a worthy way to move the needle.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said not, just kind of modernizing or refreshing the culture of the industry. You still have, a lot of old, outdated ways of, safety or just culture as a whole. And I think that a lot of this stuff definitely modernizes it and brings it up to today's standards, which I think is super important. I think that's really cool that we could also show, and we're trying to do that here, right? Like, we've been around, for an example, since 1968. My grandfather started this business. Things are a hell of a lot different from when my grandfather was out on a job site, and it'd be Friday afternoon, and you'd have pints with the guys, and then you go home. Like, times have so much has changed, and for the better. And I think that it's like the new culture. It's still cool to be safe, and it's still fun, and you can still have that camaraderie that is so strong in our industry. I'm interested to know, like, what would you tell a 17-year-old who thinks that they need a degree to be successful?
You've kind of touched on something that is interesting. And my first answer to that 17-year-old is what do you want to be successful at? If you think you just need a degree to be successful, the answer is you don't. If you want to be a brain surgeon, like, you probably need to go spend 12 or 15 years in school. And if you got to borrow a bunch of money to get there, do it, because that's what you want to do. If you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with that degree, then I wouldn't even bother. I'd say, what are you interested in? And how can you go and start using that interest as a profession? I look at myself, and I was very fortunate not to get buried under student debt. I couldn't have chased race cars in circles for as long as I did. I certainly could not have started Lamb Excavating and got this business kind of bootstrapped up and going if I had a big student debt obligation following me around. What I hope to tell a 17-year-old like that is, one, what are you interested in? Let's find a way that you can use that interest as a profession. And two, if you're interested in building stuff and working with your hands, like, our industry is a place that you should explore. And I told a girl that was wanting to be a doctor, she was a middle school age girl, and it was like, hey, what are you planning on doing? And she says, well, I want to be a doctor. And I said, well, how are you gonna pay for school? She goes, well, I'm gonna have to take student loans. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, what are you going to do while you're going to school? Like, have you ever thought about what you might be able to do to make a bit more money than flipping burgers while you're going to college? I said, when you're in high school, you can graduate high school with a Class A CDL. And she's like, well, I don't really want to be a truck driver. I said, well, fair enough. But if you came out of high school with a Class A CDL, you could go drive a triaxle dump truck right here. You'd be home every night. It's the summer, so the triaxle companies are always looking for more drivers because they're trying to run those trucks 24 hours a day with paving operations. You come home from school, you drive a dump truck, you're probably only making 6 times what your friends are making, and you could use some of that to help pay for your school, and you'll come out at the other end when you are a doctor, and you'll have a heck of a lot less student debt to pay off. I've got a close friend of mine who is a doctor, and he's 40 and just finished paying off his student loans. So, like, even if you still have to borrow a bunch of money and you take our industry as a stepping stone in your path to where you're ultimately going, that's okay. And that's good for our industry. That's good for the person. And by the end of it, she was kind of like, I never really thought of that. And I said, well, the key is you got to have that Class A CDL. And out in the world, it cost me the better part of 10 grand to get somebody a Class A because the schooling is $5,000 or $6,000, and most of the people can't afford to sit in class for 3 weeks without a paycheck.
Yeah.
So if you're in high school and you can have that driver's license when you graduate, like, that's a foot in the door anywhere you want to go. And I think that's the other thing I would tell the 17-year-old kid is you're really looking for a foot in the door. In many places, your degree is the foot in the door to get your career started. But in our industry, there's a million different ways that you can jam your foot in the door. It might be that truck driving license. It might be the fact that you're a certified welder. It might be the fact that you've come through a civil construction program and you might know a thing or two before you get started. So you're looking for that thing that basically gets somebody to give you a chance. And then once you've got your foot in the door and you've got your first job, what you do job over job over job as you build your career is going to dictate far more of where you end up than what piece of paper got your foot in the door.
Yeah, I feel like if I was told that at 17, it would really open up my eyes. I think that our industry is definitely one of the most unique industries in the sense of you want to make X amount of dollars and you want to, whatever success is to you, like have a good work-life balance, or is it monetary value, or is it happiness and showing up every day? And, you can have all those things in this industry. And, I look at a lot of people because, we have people that apply that have so many degrees and stuff like that. But a lot of the times it's just like somebody that really wants to put in hard work, and hard work out trumps so many things I find in life. That's kind of like just my motto, because I wasn't a gifted high school student. I probably didn't try as hard as I should have. Well, definitely did it, but I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I know I'm not, but I will work extremely hard and I will outwork the next guy or girl beside me. And I've always just told people that, especially at our roundtable meetings or our company-wide meetings, like, you guys want to go up to management or be management, the opportunity is there. We have living proof of it here in our office. Guys that started as foremen and now they're, project managers. We have a girl that was a truck driver and now she's our coordinator in the office because she put in that extra. So I just think that message, and it's what you're saying as well. It's like, and maybe that person, that girl that wants to be the doctor, she go gets her CDL, she find out that, hey, actually, this is a really good industry to be in and stay in, and I can make good money at it as well too. Maybe I'll stay in kind of this lane. I just think that it's the barrier to entry is actually somewhat low in construction, but there's so much opportunity, right? There's so much opportunity.
I think you touched on something there, Taylor, too, that we've seen pretty frequently across, call it the skilled trades. We kind of champion 5 different career paths. So heavy equipment operators, truck drivers, welders and fabricators, precision CNC machinists, and automotive and diesel techs. But in the places that you go with those skills, our industries promote from within often. And so I've had a lot of people that we've interviewed that it's like, well, what do you do now? And it's like, well, I'm the national sales manager for a trailer OEM. And you're like, okay, how did you start? Well, I started welding. I came in the shop, I was a certified welder, and I started off welding. And then what happened? Well, there was an opportunity on a sales team, and I was kind of ready to try something different. So I went and I decided to become a salesperson. Like, oh, really? That's interesting. Like, yeah, I wasn't very good at sales, but I really knew the product. And so that allowed me to sell. And I knew the product because I built the product. And he said, well, then pretty soon I'm the highest performing salesperson on this sales team. So they made me the sales manager. And then he taught his entire sales team about the product and how to sell around knowing the product. And so pretty soon his sales team. And so this guy's, in the span of about 15 years, gone from a welder on the floor of the shop building trailers to the national sales manager. And it was all promoted from within. You talked about, you've got your truck driver that's now kind of running your dispatch, and you've got field guys that are running the project management. And so to be promoted and kind of move up the chain in our industry, knowledge of what you're doing or what you're managing or how you're doing it becomes so critical that we almost have no choice but to promote from within. So again, kind of back to that foot in the door, our industry has a very low barrier to entry to get your foot in the door and give it a try. But if you're a star, once you come through the door, the opportunity is endless. And then that's without even saying, hey, what's the challenge of construction? Well, you finally find a really good guy, and 6 years later, you're bidding against him. So, you can step out and start your whole own enterprise if you want. So I think our industry probably has some of the fewest barriers to entry out there. And if you come in and do a good job, like the sky is the limit, really.
The last thing you said, it's funny. Two of my that were like head kind of management, they left to start their own businesses as well too. So it is, and it's good to see. It's crazy, but it's also just not for the faint of heart, right? Like, I mean, it's very cash and capital intensive business. There's ups and downs, and we deal with wintertime here. You were just talking about weather. When it's raining, all of our plans yesterday on Sunday. My supervisor was texting like, hey, like, what else could we flip this crew and do because that job shut down now? It's not like what being weather dependent also too is just it's a really tough thing. What's next for you, and what's next for what you're doing with the Skills Gap and Lamb Excavating and all that?
That's all really good questions. Lamb is kind of in a transitional phase. I'm not 100% sure what it looks like in 2 years. We're kind of feeling our way through that. As far as what's next for Geoff Dodge Racing and promoting our industry, I think we've proven our concept here in Indiana. And our next move is to try and make it a more Midwest regional focused effort. Take what we've done here in Indiana and spread it out. See if we can duplicate our efforts in other states. My hope, and I think about what you just said, Taylor, about the guys leaving and starting other companies. So if I take my Lamb Excavating hat off and I put my Geoff Dodge Racing, I'm an industry ambassador hat on, that excites me. That's people that are going to go out and take their shot at achieving the same dream that your family's achieved, right? Your third generation.
Yep.
That's potentially starting the lineage of another 3-generation company that's going to take care of a family and serve its employees and its communities for generations. So my hope, I guess, with the Geoff Dodge Racing and the industry ambassador side is that we're going to have a lot more stories like that we're going to have a lot more young people that come in and work at Lamb Excavating and gain some experience and serve that business, and then move out and go do what do what I've done, do what your great grandfather did, and get started. We're in a unique time where there's so much work out there that needs to be done. It's hard for me to feel bad about something like that where somebody's gonna step out and take a shot at it, because it's tough because you've invested in that individual, but there's opportunity, because that means now you've got an open role to fill, and hopefully one of your other guys can move up and assume that, and that creates a gap down at the bottom where maybe the next superstar is going to step in and get their start at, it's Ken White Construction, right?
Yeah.
So, or Lamb Excavating, or you name it. Like, my hope is that we can help make sure that there's a talented young person ready to step into that space.
Well, I mean, you're doing a lot of really amazing things, and I think whenever I think of everything we talk about kind of in a whole, I always ask myself, and I'd love to ask you, like, I mean, you've answered why you care so much, right? But like, you don't have to do what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like people that start, these big foundations and fundraisers. And why do you think that you are doing it? Is it faith? Is it something when you were younger? Is it something you have kids and you look at them like I know that skills gap and you see that, but there's more there. Like, why?
Well, I am a person of faith. So there is an element of, when you are a Christ follower and you actually believe that stuff, there's somewhat of a duty and obligation to serve others. But if I'm being completely honest, Taylor, part of why I'm doing it is because I'm a little bit frustrated that I didn't get started in this sooner. I'm still 5-year-old Geoff. I'm bigger now. And 5-year-old Geoff didn't ever get to start playing with excavators and doing construction until he was much older, because he got sold the bill of goods that there was no opportunity in our industry. And so my hope is that if I can find 13, 14, 15-year-old Geoff and say, hey, man, you do well in a traditional academic environment. Everybody's telling you got to go to college. Like, if you want to go to college and you don't have to borrow a bunch of money to do it, by all means do it. But hey, this construction thing is for real, and take advantage of the opportunity to jam your foot in the door in construction while you're in high school. And like, maybe then 21, 22, 23-year-old Geoff is starting a construction company then. And that's like almost 10 years sooner than what I did. And how much different could my career on a lot of fronts look if I had another decade head start, if I'm talking to you right now at 29 or 30 instead of 40. So I think that's part of what motivates me. But it's also, we launched this thing at Con Expo 2. It wasn't the most recent Con Expo, but the one before it. So I guess 4 years ago, I heard something said there that I thought really painted the picture. And it was like, in the next 10 years, we're going to spend more as a percentage of GDP in the United States on infrastructure than we've spent since the building of the interstate highways. And in the same time period, there's like a 46% reduction in workforce among the contractors that are typically going to do that type of work. And there's no plan to replace it.
Wow.
That's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
What we do, nobody thinks about until it doesn't work. Nobody thinks about sanitary work until the toilets don't flush. Nobody thinks about water until the faucet doesn't turn on or it doesn't come out smelling right. Nobody thinks about stormwater until something floods. So what are we doing to build our infrastructure? Because society's always got a need for what we do. And we've sort of diminished the potential of what it is to come and construct and service and work on this stuff. So I think there's a portion of the why is, now that I know a lot more about the importance of this industry and the opportunity of this industry and everything else, like, what can I do with what God's given me to affect some change? Because if I just sit there and complain about it, like a lot of other people, I'm as much a part of the problem as anything. So we started Lamb Excavating from the standpoint of like, don't be afraid to get out there and do it and figure it out as you go. Well, this is sort of the same thing. Don't sit there and complain about not having talented young people or be the crotchety old guy this generation just doesn't want to work. Well, get out there and see if you can find some that do. And before you have the most talented people, you've got to convince the most talented people that they should come to you and not go one of the other places that is working very hard to attract them.
I think you nailed it. Yeah, it's exactly what we need more of. I think it's amazing what you're doing. I have these conversations more often than not, and it's exactly what you were saying. It's you have these conversations with people, but yet there's nothing being done about it, right? So it's like, well, you're part of the problem as well. So you're actually trying to fix the problem, which I think is really good. And you're definitely going to see change and make some change. And I think that it's amazing. So, amazing job, Geoff. I look forward to seeing, especially with this new partnership that you have as well too. I look forward to seeing kind of what comes of that, and hopefully we could do another follow up, and like another 6 months from now, and catch up and see all the stuff that has kind of been happening in your life. But thank you very much for coming on here today, man, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Taylor. It's kind of something I'm not super used to doing, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell our story. I think it's great that you guys are doing this, and I know you've had Mike Rowe on this podcast, and I see that you're touching on some other things that are kind of typically maybe a little bit taboo in our industry, mental health, that sort of thing. So I appreciate you putting yourself out there that way. And if I can have kind of a closing word about the skilled trade gap, if you're in our industry and you're listening to this, whether you're a supplier, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a contractor, you can probably see that the skilled trade gap is a problem. Get involved, get your hands dirty. If you don't know what to do, by all means, we would love to talk to you. We are looking for new industry partners all the time. If not, SkillsUSA is in all 50 states. So if you're in the United States, reach out to your local SkillsUSA chapter and ask how you can help. And it might be something as simple as showing up to judge a competition. You might be founding the heavy equipment and civil construction pathway, but get involved, get out there, do it. It does feel good to give back to your industry. It does make you feel good to see some of these young kids and what they're capable of. And it kind of pulls you out of that typical, the next generation sucks and they're not going to do anything good. Don't be afraid to get out and get your hands dirty. And I'd love to catch up with you in 6 months. Maybe in the meantime, Taylor, we need to drag you out to a sprint car race somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, I'm down 100%. That would be awesome.
Well, thanks again.
All right, Geoff. Appreciate it. Take care.